What was the bear case for this event? So some may say the bots were teleoperated, but you had 20 of them. And just that alone, I guess, is a different viewpoint. So what does that mean? You had 20 of the cybercabs driving people around flawlessly, and they did not, they did not put kind of fenced it in and had actors. They let all 3,000 attendees walk wherever you wanted to walk. I saw ATVs. I had people on bicycles, lots of cars going all over the place, and the autonomous experience was perfect for everybody, really. So, what is it that other than they didn't release the plan? I wanted to have a full plan for robotaxi. But what is it? What is exactly was a failure for this event to show that Tesla's going to fail? Let's go to you, Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think those of you in the room who have known me for a while know that I'm a bull, and I'm pretty bearish on this event. And just given it roughly was what was just said there, that like, yes, nothing material changed in terms of revenue. Like there's no new revenue opportunities that have suddenly opened up. This was showing us, all of us that have FSD, what we've to some degree already known the future will look like. I'm not surprised that they're going to remove the steering wheel in the future. That's kind of what they've been telling us for a very long time. Elon once again reiterated the FSD unsupervised is coming next year, but they didn't say that they're going to start production, or they don't actually have the factory. Like, no real commitments were made that force them to do anything different than what we've experienced over the last few years. So that's where I'm more negative on this event as a whole, because it's like, okay, I mean, specifically, the thing that really got me excited was that Elon tweeted the day before, like that it's a launch event. And I'm maybe taking that word too literally, but I also do think that that actually should matter. If you call it a launch event rather than an unveil, those two mean different things. I believe they unveiled.
He launched the future.
I disagree. Nothing was launched. He portrayed what the future will look like according to Tesla, but he didn't launch the future. Launching the future would have been actually something that we can now, today, buy, like from a service or product perspective, and that's not the case. Nothing was launched, and so I'm taking a pretty critical stance on what this event was, and you add on to that the some people are going to have different opinions on this, but the fact that they didn't specify that they were remote operated. I mean, Optimus is impressive from a robotic standpoint, not massively impressive, but if we understand like the scale of manufacturing of what they're going to do with Optimus, it's going to be impressive. In fact, they could hypothetically manufacture and sell it as a teleoperated thing, and that would be actually really incredible. But they're not claiming they're ever going to do that yet. I know he responded to Sawyer's tweet, suggested that was like a potential revenue stream for people. But again, they've not made any commitments to launch anything at the event or even since the event. And then there's the additional questions of, okay, the Optimus was teleoperated. That's a little bit misleading from like to the layman who may have thought, oh, these are actually operating on their own. And to what degree they were teleoperated, we still don't know. But because we don't know, we can almost, or maybe we should almost, assume the worst. And then it does also, in my mind, bring up the question of, okay, what else were we maybe not told the full truth about? I go to Robovan, we only saw it drive for a few hundred yards, maybe. Presumably that was with the same software and not just like on a preset track, but also, does it really matter? Maybe not. But if you assume that it was actually like remote controlled in any way or a preset path in any way, it does beg the question of, again, the cyber cab and the Model Ys, how much of that was human interacted with? And I'm just, there should be more clarity on all of that at this point. And the fact that there's not, again, I naturally go to assume the worst. And then it's like, okay, did we really experience anything?
Can I just squash the? Can I just squash the teleoperated cars? Yoon Tasai is one of the Tesla AI team guys, and somebody said something about them being remote controlled, and he said, "Thank you for the compliment. I was working on the build for 6 hours that morning before the event. It was FSD 13. It was not the cars were not teleoperated."
Yeah. And talking to the actual
Yeah, I mean, who shit in your cereal bowl this morning, man? Did we go to the same
I,
event? The event where we took our first driverless Tesla ride? The event where they had Optimus interacting with us? I mean, you can't really let the haters and naysayers kind of shape what you do. Of course, they're going to say, oh, it's not real, it's all fake, this is never going to happen. They've said that every single step of the way. When they unveiled the Roadster, they said, EVs are so far off. Where do you even charge them? How are you going to take a road trip? When they did the Model S, they said, you can't do a sedan. When they did the Model 3, they said, you can't make an affordable EV. And when they did the Model Y, they said, it's just a jacked up Model 3. It ended up becoming the best selling car in the world. When they unveiled the Cybertruck, they said, this is vaporware. This will never ship. It's not road legal. Guess what? That's now the third best-selling EV in the United States. It's outselling every other EV. And yet people still come and they say, oh, this isn't real. It's not going to work. Oh, they unveiled it too early. They want to test these things. They want to put them on the road, right? These are autonomous vehicles. They're going to require road testing ahead of their launch in 2026. So they have to show off the product. Does that mean they're not working on anything else? Does that mean they're not working on a new Model Y? Does it mean they don't have more affordable models based on the next gen platform with a lot of the components we saw in the Cybercab? Does it mean they're not working on a Roadster? Of course not. But this was a vision of the future. This wasn't about us Tesla nerds going, oh, well, he tweeted launch. There's technically a difference between a launch and an unveil. This was for the ordinary people who got to experience the future that Tesla wants to build. They walked around an event, they saw driverless cars, they talked to a robot. They got to see what the full capabilities of that robot are, how it could talk to you, how it could interact with you. They saw the future that Tesla's going to build. And, to just kind of look at it and say, well, there were some humans involved. I mean, did you see the robot hardware? Did you see the way this thing moved? Have you ever seen anything like that before? And by the way, the walking, a lot of the gestures, a lot more of it was actually automated than you think. It's not really safe to have a robot just, go walk around without anybody monitoring it. I think, they've received a lot of criticism for having people talk through it, but it wasn't about saying this is our LLM. Anybody who's not a total idiot could tell that it was a human and not an LLM. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. But they showed us what a world with Optimus and driverless cars could be like. I mean, this is what separates Tesla from everybody else. Everybody else does minor product updates and refreshes. They have a long-term vision here, and they've honestly been criticized for this vision every step of the way, but they single-handedly made it a reality. I mean, people forget now because we have so many EVs. I mean, people like Ryan have an entire industry to cover now because of what they did, right? But we forget that when they started the Roadster, people thought it was just as crazy as a steering wheel less car.
I just want to throw out there that yes, while I agree with a lot of
More
what,
crazy, actually.
while I agree with a lot of what you're saying, I have not been a negative person on Tesla for all that time. In fact, when Roadster was coming out, I convinced my parents to buy one of the earliest Model S's, a signature series. I bought one of the first Model 3s. I am a fan of the company. There's no question about that.
No, and we know that you love the company. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
necessarily
just
just trying to call out you, but this has been the predominant take, right?
yes, but
It's just hating on it. Oh, it's all fake. They're
there,
never going to
there's a
do it.
difference.
It's never going to
Yeah, but there's
exist.
a difference between.
This is a real
But
product.
there's a difference.
This isn't just some concept car. They're actually going to
So
make
the two
this.
things I want to say, because I think that it's really gets to the core of the argument, is like, one, why not say that, hey, today they're teleoperated, but tomorrow or next year they'll be, why not say something to be a little bit more authentic and true. And then like why, like I don't see why we have to have that perception gap from reality where it could trick some people, because then again it does beg the question of how deep does that rabbit hole go. When I being there, I didn't want to even consider that. I wanted to believe that everything we were experiencing was more finished than
I mean,
that.
look,
Now
if you want to hate on it, you're going to find something. There's never been an event where they haven't found some negative way to spin it. This wasn't about saying this is where our AI models are. They never made that claim. This is just simply a demo of the robot hardware.
they
And one of
also
the
never made they also never they
one of the
also
primary initial use cases of the robot is actually going to be teleoperation. Just like with the
well
cars,
then say
everything
that. Then one second, let's make that a
just
point.
like with
Then
just
they
like with
should
the
have said
car,
that.
just like with the cars, not everything is going to be autonomous all the time. You're going to start with teleoperation, semi-autonomous. Like for example, with the
But they
bartender,
should have said that.
you had a human there taking the order, but then they just pressed one button and the robot would autonomously pick up the glass and pour the drink itself. This is something where, I mean, imagine you have to defuse a bomb. Imagine you have to monitor a construction site. There's so many use cases. And if you look at how they're actually training the end-to-end models, they're using this teleoperation to gather the training data to train the end-to-end models to perform these tasks autonomously. So you can have these tasks, train one of your have one of your workers train these bots, and then it can just do the task autonomously from then on out. So
It will hypothetically be able to do that, yes, but it's not doing that
Wait,
today. And the teleoperations side is actually a really cool one, and they should have claimed that,
Ryan,
saying,
did you think the bot was actually talking and listening and responding? Did you think that they somehow put a speaking LLM onto Optimus?
no, no, but there
Ryan,
were people that did. If you look at all my comments in my first video, I had someone, comment that they were going to block me for even making that claim that it wasn't AI initially. Someone literally blocked me because they thought I was claiming something that wasn't true because they did believe it was AI.
there are
Ryan,
lots of idiots on the
Right.
internet.
I know, but
Nobody
they
who
should.
isn't an idiot thought that it was actually
They
AI.
should have. There have been people
and
from the Tesla community who called me to
Ryan
ask.
Holmar, if I can interrupt both of you, you're actually both right. And I want to share from the experience. We're talking the bulls and the bears, or the takeaway from this event. And so when I watched the event, I was extremely excited. I said, "This has never been done before, and this is next level." And but the analyst in me, the portfolio manager, my heart sunk because I knew that the stock would be down the next day, and I knew that most Wall Street would be very quick to sell. And so I was a bit disappointed because as a PM, I knew that I would be getting a bunch of calls from clients the next day asking, why is Tesla stock down again? But by the end of the weekend, I really came back extremely positive. Like most people here, Omar, you as well, you're absolutely right. They're nailing this. And if I were to say from a high level, why do most bears, why can't they understand this story? And I think it's because everything that Tesla is doing and everything Elon Musk is doing, it's never been done before. So it's very, very difficult when you're analyzing a company. You're trying to predict what are the earnings, what's the future growth rate of those earnings, and are they winning market share or not winning market share. But every time Tesla goes into a market, it hasn't been done before. And I think a lot of people struggle, a lot of analysts struggle understanding that, because I've heard people say, well, you can't put it into a spreadsheet. It's not just the spreadsheet, it's like the entire segment has never been done before. So Wall Street has a very difficult time with that. And so we came across, and I went into the office today. I was down in New York last week and back, and I sat down where we had Thanksgiving up in Canada. My brother is a partner of mine and also a PM, and extremely bright. And he said, you know what, I was really disappointed with the event. I said, that's interesting. Why? And he said, because there was nothing new. I said, well, what do you mean? The same comments that Holmar was pointing out. The movement of Optimus was stunning. I did not care if it was teleoperated. So this thing was a human 2 years ago, and today we have this thing that moves as well as a human. And he would argue with me, he says, yeah, it's because a human was moving it. I said, yeah, but the way that the actuators were moving were extremely competent. So, and I thought about what he had to say, and we always have great discussions, but he was right. I said, what did you expect? And he said, well, everybody, all the things that we saw, we sort of knew they were working on. We knew that they were working on an autonomous vehicle. We knew that we had a feeling that it would be two-seater. Many people were expecting there to be some kind of van. We've already seen the Optimus, and and he actually pointed out on Optimus, he said they've been really quiet about Optimus for the last couple of months. They're working on something, and I think that's why they're not talking about it. And so he wasn't wrong, and I thought to myself, well, what would have moved the stock in the other direction? And it would have been, as people were talking about in this forum, that they said, well, this is a We Robot launch. And so it would have been something spectacular. And we know they're not ready for that. But what if they did come out and say, you know what, these cyber cabs, we're going into production as of tomorrow, or we're going to open up the network. But we know they're not ready for that. So that wasn't anything new to us. That's all I have to say, is that's why the bears took over and the stock got driven down. I thought overnight that the stock would go down much further than it did. I'm actually quite happy that it's held in there around 220.
Simon,
Yoda, what are your thoughts?
before we go to Yoda, Simon, I love what you said. I think it just comes down to those two things: expectations, and I think we need to realize that Wall Street isn't the target audience.
Look, I
we
mean,
aren't the target audience here.
if you focus every day on trying to make the stock go up, you're not going to generate the kind of long-term value that Tesla does. What we saw unveiled was the most significant product since the Model 3. I don't think you guys understand that they're gearing up to make millions of units of these things a year
So
at $30,000.
let's talk about why
2
that
million
matters.
units. Well, I mean, can I finish making my point, or?
I got you, Omar. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, they're going to be making 2 million of these things. It's going to do more volume than the Model S, the Model 3, the Model X, the Model Y, the Cybertruck, and everything else they make combined. This Optimus product that they've got, I mean, the range of human motion it's able to replicate, this is going to make their entire auto business look like a small piece of their business by comparison. And it's risky. But this is the reason why Tesla is going to outperform BYD. What does the market want? The market wants a $25,000 compact EV. But you do that, sure, the stock will go up a little bit. But long term, you're left in the same rat race, fighting in a competitive, horrible market with just cutthroat. And here, where do you end up here? You end up in a completely different place than BYD in terms of returns, in terms of income. So being this far out there requires being okay with people laughing at you, being okay with people calling you a fraud, saying you made it all up, you're crazy. Look at the Starship. You guys remember when that thing was blowing up? They said, oh my God, that's not a rocket, that's a flying water tower. What are these idiots doing? Oh my God, it blew up again, right? It blew up again and again and again. How many tests did they have before they caught a rocket falling out of space with chopsticks, right? Representing a breakthrough in space flight, bringing down the cost of space. They can now put up higher Starlink satellites. And every time there's an intervention in FSD or something like that, you have these naysayers and they go, oh, they'll never do it. Just like every time that Starship blew up, they said, oh, they'll never do it. But being willing to focus on the long term, even when the market hates it, even when everyone laughs at you, that's why most companies aren't long-term focused, because they get killed in the market, they get killed in the court of public opinion, and people laugh at them. But ultimately, this is what drives long-term returns. And this is why I'm a Tesla shareholder.
I'm also a very large
Nice.
Tesla shareholder relative to my net worth, point is, everything that they unveiled only matters if they solve autonomy. And I think that's kind of the root of my point.
If they solve autonomy, we're still saying if at this point
Let me,
in
can I,
2024 when we have real driverless
okay, you interrupted
services
me
in
this time.
multiple cities.
Point is, they're trying to do something that's never been done before with cameras only, and that claim has been outstanding for multiple years, not yet solved. So these products only matter if a promise.
My car drove me on the most dangerous road in California, going into Gilroy with head-on traffic,
Wait,
going 55 miles to 75 miles an hour straight at me on a curvy road with only 2 feet in between us. And you're telling me cameras can't drive?
I'm not saying they can't drive. I'm just saying they might not be able to drive in all situations at all times in the way that it's needed to have you removed from the driver's seat.
They
That's my
can
point.
see more detail at night than you can see with your
That's
human
actually
eye.
not
And
necessarily
you're telling
true.
that is,
We
take your iPhone out
we
at
have
night and look around on your screen. You'll see a lot more than you can see with your human eye.
okay.
I mean, Ryan, did you take a driverless ride at the event in one of these vision-only cars?
Yeah, of course. I actually had a really good one. It's posted online.
Did you die?
No, but also the speed was limited to 5 miles per hour in a private property situation where, like, I know there was a lot going on, but
You know,
pedestrians like.
yesterday I was at my parents'
Okay.
house and I was standing in the driveway and I said, "Take me home." I pushed one button, the car pulled out of the driveway. It pulled out of their gated community. It drove me all the way home and then it parked on the curb. I didn't touch the steering wheel once. As a matter of fact, the only time I touched the steering wheel was to turn FSD on. Then I got out of the car. I never touched the steering wheel. Now you're telling me in 2026, 2027, there's no way they can have a car without a steering wheel? I mean,
I'm
this
not
isn't
saying there's
even
no way.
ambitious. Even General
Listen to the
Motors
statement that
has
I
shown
made.
off designs.
Listen to the statement I made is just that the products they unveiled rely on what you're saying scaling up still significantly, and until they can do that, those products do not have material value.
This is
Well-
this conversation can go on forever, and I think we hear the consternation and we hear the confidence. I think it's a pointless conversation. If you don't believe that if you don't believe Elon and team can do it, then don't buy the stock, sell your stock, get out of the stock, because Elon has made it very clear that he's betting the company on FSD. Period. It's not. It's not if, when, it's absolutely clear that he's saying, I believe in it, I'm betting on the company. Now, I personally believe him. I've just traveled 2,500 miles on FSD. True, I've had to intervene several times, actually, not once or twice, several times. I think it's 4 or 5 times. I've had a guest from Norway driving the car, and he's had to intervene twice, I believe, once or twice. First time he's ever driven FSD, first time he's ever driven a Cybertruck. But I did witness a 200-ton rocket coming in at almost 7,000 miles an hour, slow down and actually land on 2 points on pure FSD. I mean, no LiDAR, not even cameras. So, you either believe it or you don't believe it. You either have confidence in the man or you don't. And if you don't, don't make the bet. It's that simple. And really, we're in the situation where PMs be damned, analysts be damned, individuals who don't believe be damned, get out of the stock. If you believe in the company, the value of the stock today or tomorrow, before the event or after the event, is immaterial. It has no material. It's of no consequence at all. What's of consequence is if they succeed, the value is incredible. If they don't succeed, well, it's going to be very tough riding. So you just make your decisions accordingly. You don't have to convince the other side. Both sides don't have to convince each other. You either have that belief or you don't. And it's quite significant to the value of the price of the stock. So this argument could go on forever.
Yeah.
Because
So kilowatts, Ryan, just a quick comment is that
Well
it's not zero value, right? Because even teller-operated bots can save billions of dollars
but
for people.
you're
Let's
talking
say,
about bots. I'm talking about
and
cars.
and teleoperated cars as well. I was going to get there. You will have teleoperated cars as well. That's what all of them do. You have a person there, and if it gets stuck somewhere, then it pulls it out. That's what it will happen. So it's not zero, even if you don't get 100% disengagement. But there's no doubt at this point it's going to get there.
I
Well
can
said, everyone.
I keep going back. Hold on, I got to raise your hand if you're going to speak on the speaker panel. I keep going back. I mean, I wrote a post on this. We had a pod on it. Tesla's not going to unveil something that's not ready to order. I don't know why. Like, we keep coming back to this. Like, there was no driverless compact car that was going to be you could order and get receipt of like immediately. Like there was never a promise of that. So I'm surprised that's a surprise to people. And the statement that, and again, we're all just conversing here, it's totally fine, but like there's nothing available for revenue next year. I mean, unsupervised FSD is certainly going to generate revenue in the two largest states once it launches. Obviously, that schedule could move around. FSD expanding in Asia and Europe is obviously going to add revenue. And Tesla is going to comment on these interim lower cost vehicles on their earnings calls. This is what they've done on the last two earnings calls. This is how you handle near term 90, 180 day items. Is they handle it on that 90-day earnings call. It would be bizarre for them to have. They have $15 billion of supplier liability plus capex plus all other kinds of liability on the Model 3 and Model Y. Every quarter, they're ordering components to their suppliers. So how stupid would it be for them to say, oh, yeah, and there's these lower cost vehicles coming. We know exactly what it looks like. They're very far in the development process, and we're going to start production the first half of next year. Here they are. Well, you know what? People for car purchases, they may wait 6 months on a car purchase, and it's actually in the same category, most likely, of a 3 and Y, versus the robotaxi. The two-seater robotaxi is nothing like that. They said it's 2 years out. The Robovan's obviously nothing like that, multiple years out, and of course Optimus again. So I mean, that's why they had that event. That's why they station things the way they are. And again, there's two different kinds of things. If you want to go, like if you go to an iPhone event, they're going to unveil, here's the next product with the camera button. It's available to order next week. Well, those are very small. Those are much smaller level increments of innovation, and that's a different kind of thing. So I think people just need to I think there's a couple of different paradigms. I think the valley's splitting. I think with AI, I think everything's just splitting off here, and you're starting to see things that are probably going to happen in larger time chunks than what we've been programmed for the last 10 years of going to a launch event and then ordering a product the same day.
So I drove my Tesla to Detroit to do my homework back in 2018 because my money manager hated the idea of investing in Tesla and laid out all of the things that could go wrong, including bankruptcy, which it almost did. I almost lost my entire investment in Tesla in 2018 because it almost went bankrupt. People forget that. He asked me a question to prepare me. In 1999, Amazon was $112 and everybody was exuberant and everything was going great. And then in 2000, the dot-com bust happened and everything started going bankrupt. And Amazon went down in 2001, was at $6. And he asked me, did you sell? Did you have the conviction to stick in there? Even after it seems like the whole village is burning down. And that's why I drove to Detroit to go and see how Ford makes vehicles. An executive walked me around the F-150 line, F-120 line, which is quite impressive. If you get to go to Detroit, I would suggest taking a tour of it. It's pretty cool.
Thanks. Okay, so we've got Tesla Yoda. You've had your hands up, and then we've got John for Tesla Owner Silicon Valley. Want to hear more from Warren, Simon, and Larry? Go ahead, Yoda.
Yeah, just to answer the question, what do I see that bears or traders don't? Yeah, I think as a long-term investor, some of us think of our
I
owner.
can't hear Yoda, so I think I'll jump
I
out.
can hear him. Keep going, Yoda.
Yeah, I think some of the long-term investors, myself included, think of our ownership in a stock in terms of owning a slice of the business. And the way to calculate that is that we calculate our ownership as a tiny slice of the annual production capacity. And so what happens at the event is that, you know, before the event, you see Tesla going from producing um, a quarter of the car per minute to maybe later on a half a car to now multiple cars within that same time frame across multiple gigafactories, right? And so at the 1010 event, what I witness and what I'm able to confirm with my own eyes is that Tesla's future and its future potential is going beyond just EV manufacturing. And specifically within those ownership minutes, it's now going to be, providing rides through the cybercab and the existing fleet. It's going to be deploying and selling Optimus in commercial and consumer applications, all within those same production minutes. So the question I ask myself is, have those minutes I own become more productive and valuable in the future? And it's pretty clear to me that Tesla is evolving into an AI company that manufactures and deploys autonomous robots at scale. And so therefore it has become a lot more valuable.
Well said, Yoda.
Thank you, Yoda. Warren, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something Simon was talking about earlier about portfolio managers, and I can't put that in a spreadsheet. And I agree with him that a lot of people can't wrap their head around what the value is until they see revenue lines and cost of goods sold lines. But I've put it in spreadsheets. Stephen Mark Ryan has put it in spreadsheets. A lot of us who are modeling the future of robotaxi, the future of Optimus, CERN Basher, I can name a few others, have put together spreadsheets. You can do it in a spreadsheet. It just doesn't fit in the rigid model that they learned in their MBA program of how you value things. So your point, though, that until you start seeing revenue, it's hard to place a value on it. That you have the analysts who don't get it. Then you have the analysts who do get it, but they figure, well, the other analysts don't get it yet, so the stock's not going to go up yet. And you end up with this sort of game of like, okay, let's suppose I'm confident that we're going to start seeing revenue, meaningful revenue in the first quarter of 2027. Do I wait until the first revenue starts and then the other analysts start buying? Or do I say, you know what? The other analysts are going to figure it out in Q1 of 2027, so I better buy in Q4 of 2026. And then some other analysts say, well, wait a minute. Some of the other guys are going to figure it out and start investing in Q4 of 2026, and they're going to drive the price up, so I better buy in Q3 of 2026. And it's hard to figure out how far back that goes to drive the stock price. I don't have an answer to this question. I just think that that's the kind of thing that's hard to wrap your head around. I was going to ask Simon for. Does that make sense, Simon?
It does and it doesn't. But what I mean by that is, so you think, is there any other company that we can think of that Wall Street analysts are going to model out something that doesn't exist? When I say doesn't exist, I'm saying they're creating industries, or Tesla's creating industries and markets that don't exist. Like, this has never been done before. So how can they confidently come out?
That's not true. Amazon did that. I mean,
Who has? Sorry.
yeah, that's
I mean,
absolutely
they're
not true.
public too.
I bought Amazon on exactly that promise as well. I don't think that's true. I think you have to pay some attention to priors, and Tesla has an incredible record of priors, and so does Elon. So to say that we don't base it on that, we don't base our judgment on that, that's just not true.
I agree with you, Larry. That's why Tesla is our largest position and my single largest stock holding. But I'm telling you, this is the way Wall Street thinks. And even on Amazon, Amazon was a bookstore,
But
right?
why?
And then they became.
Yeah, but I don't understand why that's an issue. I don't know. I understand why we consider that as an issue. I mean, the value of being an independent thinker is that we can achieve, beta over those guys who are rote thinkers. So, to me, it's not it isn't even it isn't a consideration I place on it. So what the PMs are doing and what they're saying and what the analysts are saying is of no consequence to me at all.
But isn't this the problem with people who are timing the market, Larry? Is if you're
Yeah,
looking at the people who aren't thinking the way we think, and you
yeah.
say, well, they control a lot of the investment, and they're affecting what the
But
stock price is going to be.
that's our beta. The company has a beta, and then we have a beta. So we have a lot more knowledge, we have a lot more conviction, and it's based upon a certain set of priors. If we're confident in what we say and if we're confident in what we think, then that's a differential. Now, what some people were talking about earlier about, that it wasn't doing this or it wasn't doing that or wasn't doing, that's fair and that's a viewpoint. And then, that person must take a certain strategy with their investment. Those people who have confidence and those people who rely upon these other priors that that they see, then they should make that investment.
Yeah, Larry, I loved that you mentioned Amazon, because I bought Amazon in 2013 when it was, I think, zero profit or basically unprofitable, and the PE
Okay, so
ratio was occasionally infinite. And
yeah,
my biggest investing mistake was I didn't buy more. And when 2015, December 21, 2015 happened, and SpaceX landed the first orbital rocket, like, my whole investing thesis for Tesla from the very beginning was, holy shit, they landed a rocket booster.
yeah.
If that guy can do that, then what are his other companies going to do? Which ones can I invest in? And by February of 2016, I started buying Tesla stock, and I didn't stop. And I think that's the but I'm sitting. I think, but my point is just, if you're concerned, and I'm not. If you're concerned with, well, when is the stock going to finally take off? Well, then you start thinking about, well, what are these other people thinking? I'm just like, I put my money in. I'm holding. I believe in Papa Elon. I believe in the team. I believe in what they're doing. I occasionally have concerns about exogenous events like a shareholder vote or a presidential election. But in terms of, whether Tesla can execute, whether Tesla can solve FSD, whether Tesla can manufacture a cyber cab at high volume at low cost, whether Tesla can engineer a robot, this question of, like, well, their robot isn't as good as Boston Dynamics and some other bullshit somebody comes up with, like, do you think they're done? First of all, I'm not so sure it's true. But second of all, do you think they finished engineering? Like, we know that this is that's not even Gen 1 of the production robot. We know there's 3 generations of the production robot coming. And by the way, just one detail from the event that I feel like almost everyone missed, and it's the in the title of my video about the event: 100 million cybercabs. Elon said they're going to make 100 million cybercabs. Now, when? Maybe it's not, the total that he envisions a fleet of 100 million cybercabs. Have you done the math on how much revenue and profit that is? Because if you do the math on that, that's like $2 trillion a year in gross profit. Now, maybe it's not until 2035. Well, I think I'll still be alive in 2035, and I'm still going to be holding a crap ton of Tesla stock. And $2 trillion, that's 100x on gross profit in 2023. And more than that, I think. So I'm comfortable with that.
Thanks, Warren. Yeah, that's back to the discussion, right? There's believers and there's people who just don't believe that it's ever going to happen. Tesla Yoda?
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to break the news. I mean, you invested in a company that came with a visionary, not a, operations executive. And so I think this was one of those events where, Elon is playing the role of what he does best, which is being that visionary, painting the experience for us. He was not optimizing for the stock price the following day. He's smart enough to know that, but he still has that, that childlike kind of visionary in him, where he wanted to share the passion that he has for what the future holds. He was not, the team cook that for that day for that event, and I think unfortunately, yeah, it just kind of comes with the whole package.
Speaking of vision, there are two things I've been really excited about that hasn't come up in today's conversation. I've been excited for the Cybercab and the Robovan being in the Las Vegas tunnel network, and I would love people's opinions on what it would take to, even if it's sample or dry runs or just one van and a couple of those vehicles, but what would it take for that to start happening?
Just briefly, I've asked Franz about that. So if you want to check my channel or in my thread here, I did ask whether or not it was the right size for that, and he kind of sheepishly said potentially. So if anyone cares to see his response on that.
Okay. Who haven't we heard from yet? John, Tesla owners? Are you there?
Yeah, I agree. I'm probably more on, I think I think that ultimately, a lot of the points that were made were very clear in that, it's what do you believe about, the people that are working there, Elon himself. I mean, what we witnessed on Sunday was insane. I've been to 3 of the 5 launches. That probably was definitely one of the top, aspects of just seeing it first, just being able to make it to space. But if you look at all the stuff that if you were to step back in time at all of the things that Elon has really ever launched, whether it was the Model 3, I mean, even Roadster, I mean, every single time Elon has been way overlooked. And ultimately, like, if you don't believe in him, then you shouldn't be investing in the stock. I mean, obviously, this is the only public company that we can invest in outside of, private, which is SpaceX and X. But, this is going to be the future. And I think that, in my opinion, like, with FSD, with gas, with auto park, I mean, all you need to do next is just bundle all 3 together, and you are literally you're almost there. It's that last mile, which is that last 1% to solve, which obviously we all know is the hardest part to solve. But even if there's certain areas where it doesn't work and it works at, let's say, 90% of America, right? Because let's say, San Francisco and some of these other cities where, we're saying that it's not perfect in or something else. Like I said, I mean, Larry was just up here saying he drove over 2,000 miles. I mean, like, I can get in a Cybertruck, which is a completely different vehicle than my Model X, the Model 3s, and it can drive itself all the way throughout the Bay Area. Even I took it in San Francisco and it did amazing there. And so that's the reality. Sure, like, yes, there's some human intervention, but ultimately that is where they're headed and that is where they're going, right? The Cybercab is not unbelievable. We're already pretty much there. Sure, they need to tighten things up, and that's going to take a lot of time. And then more importantly, Elon, I posted a video of this. He said it. The same techniques that they're using to solve full self driving are the same techniques that they're applying to this robot. And I think ultimately, just pairing both together. I mean, it's that I think maybe sometimes to their detriment is they're running too lean of a team where they can't. It's not always going to be able to scale, but that's also too just Elon's way of getting shit done because he'd rather do it with a small team versus a huge team, which is going to obviously cost a lot. But ultimately, it's whether you believe the vision of where he's going. And I just see a lot of the stuff that happened, especially with because a lot of these videos with the robot and the cybercab went absolutely like viral but people are just, they're stuck on, oh, well, it was a teleoperated. It's like, no, they were painting a future, a picture of the future. And this is not something that's super, super far away, other than maybe the robo van, which is a little bit longer out. But as far as the cybercab and then even these bots walking around, I mean, I just don't see that as being 2 decades out. I see that being within the next 5 years easily.
Yeah, agreed. Kilowatts?
Yeah, just some of what John said there reminded me of a comment that I wanted to make earlier. Again, I know this is like negative, but the promise has perceivably changed of when this will come out, or effectively when it will matter. The last time Elon spoke on unsupervised full self-driving, as he's done in the past, said later this year. So during the event, he said next year, and he also scaled back in terms of just Texas and California. You could see that as, oh, he now has clarity, but I think the general perception of buyers in the United States were under the perception that it wouldn't be geofenced by any means. So I do think that I just want to add that point, that effectively the announcements that were made were actually scaling back on prior announcements rather than accelerations, which is also negative.
That's not a realistic perspective on that announcement. I think that announcement is as much to do with regulation as it has to with capability. Honestly, I think that's where they.
I hope you're right. I hope you're
Yeah,
right.
right now motor vehicles are regulated by the
Yeah, I think
states. There's no
regulation's
federal
going to play
framework
a
for
lot into
autonomous
this,
driving.
especially like, even let's say hypothetically they solved it today. How would they go about rolling it out, especially in some of these cities, right? They'd probably have to go about it in the same way that Waymo has done it, just because of the overregulation on some of these things. That's just my opinion. Even if they rolled out a software where it's literally no human input or little to zero, they would still have to go through the regulation process to roll it out. And that, as we all know, is going to take forever. I mean, look, Europe is a completely different story.
Yeah, I think that that's all that we need to say about it. Is just one way to read it. The negative way is, hey, it's now more narrow and it's next year. And a different way to read it is, well, now we know the states where it's going to be possible, or at least we can perceive that that's where Tesla thinks it's going to be possible.
Again, I'm confused, Ryan. Did people think that Tesla was going to announce in the next 2 months a nationwide robotaxi service?
No,
Okay.
no, not
So
at all.
what's the
No one thought
okay.
that. So backing up to that, the only thing when Elon said it was going to be a launch, this is slightly different, but I was like, okay, what could be launched? And really the only thing in my mind that could be hypothetically launched would have been Optimus, kind of the same way they launched the Semi, where it was like just one supplier. They could have said, hey, we are going to start using, or we are using Optimus in our factory. Here's videos showing that actually being meaningfully valuable. And now we're going to sell to one other company to start, like that would have been a launch to
Well,
me. So if we're looking at that point, that's
the
the point I
product
was making
launch
there, that they could have launched
the
something.
product launch was a cybercab. They had 20 of them there.
No,
You
no, that's
saw
an
them,
unveil. That's an unveil.
and
That's an unveil.
it's I understand, but it's launched and it's going to be out in 2026, which is 2 years. And your
It'll be
definition,
launched in 2026.
your yeah, he said before 2027, right? Because but remember, yeah, this we're talking launch, right? We're talking about they're going to make 150,000 to 100,000 in that first year. They're going to make 250, 500,000 the following year. This is going to be millions the following year. This is a launch of a full new product, right? So 2 years from now, that's what's going to happen. Now, I think you're fair. You might say that that's not a launch if it's 2 years away. And then there's people who are a product unveil and there's a prototype and it never gets there at all. That's again your belief. Do you actually think that Tesla has the capability, that has the manufacturing, factories to build this? Do they just mock up 20 of them and it's just all fake, that they really don't have intention or capabilities to make it a real product? 2 years is maybe a little too long for you to consider that a launch, but that's what they launched.
I'm actually with Ryan on the fact that it wasn't a launch, and I thought they were going to launch
Yeah,
I thought they were going to launch. They've said possibly by Q4 of this year. They said they were going to start selling a vehicle they would manufacture on existing lines, and maybe it was going to be a low cost, more affordable vehicle. Maybe it was going to be a Model Y XL, my fantasy. I thought they might launch some vehicle that you could order today, or we're going to deliver this in Q1, and that didn't happen. So I think launch was the wrong word.
thank you. And it doesn't have to be any more significant than that. It's just a matter of launch is like delivery. When you take delivery of a vehicle, you now own it. Launch means that they were actually going to offer a product or service that today, a few weeks later, or days later, excuse me, they don't yet offer. And that's so it's a bit pedantic, but it does matter
Yeah,
from a legal
I think
perspective. It does
right.
matter from an investment
I
What
don't
perspective.
is our
know.
definition? I think it's got to be within a year, is what I was saying, because
So,
No,
which
launch means it's out
well, I
there.
mean,
Launch is a day. Launch is that
the
same day.
iPhone was out of launch when you got it 9 months later in September. That's when
guys,
it actually came out, right?
which car company has ever done that before? I must be in another universe. I don't know of a car company that ever launches a car that's available in the showrooms the next day. It's not.
Yeah, so they do unveils generally, or the launch is them releasing it to dealerships. A launch and an unveil are different things, and most of what we see in the market is what's considered an unveil. If you're calling it a launch, you should be ready to deliver a product or service.
Hey, whatever, guys. I got to go. But great conversation. Take care, all.
Thank you
Absolutely,
for your
great
input,
perspective.
Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Larry.
you.
Go ahead, Omar.
You know, I think if you are reading into this and saying, well, he tweeted it's a launch, that means they're about to launch a new vehicle or a robo taxi, you're just reading too far into the tweet. Okay. It seems like the people who are disappointed just let their imaginations run wild. Oh my God, he used this word. That must mean this huge thing is about to launch, even though it doesn't make any sense. You don't just, launch a rideshare service overnight or launch a robo-taxi
Optimus?
service overnight. Vehicles take time. I mean, they said, hey, we're doing a robo-taxi unveil. That was several months ago. Elon tweeted robo-taxi unveil 8/8. During that time, time passed. They delayed the event. Things things go on, and we're all sitting here coming up with crazier and crazier stuff. Oh, Optimus is gonna, do a cartwheel, and they're gonna unveil 5 new vehicles, and oh, we're gonna get a van, and they're gonna launch a rideshare service. And they never said they're gonna do any of that. I mean, what really matters to people is not this sort of inside baseball, oh, he tweeted launch versus unveil. The people there were not just Tesla nerds. They had celebrities, rappers, different people. This was an event for the public to show them the future that Tesla wants to build. And I think people's expectations were overinflated, which always happens every single time. And we even talked on this very space and said people's expectations are inflated.
And they bought calls, and then they're upset.
Go ahead, Simon.
Sure. If I can sort of lay out, or I'm looking at, I'm extremely bullish long term. I think Cern Basher did an excellent job on running a DCF model on a company that all of a sudden will 10x their earnings, in 10 years out. And, so the stock obviously won't go in a straight line, but it's kind of difficult when you want to invest. And if you look if there's any NVIDIA investors in this space, obviously the stock has done well the last couple of years, but there was, 2021, 2022 wasn't easy. And when did you want to own that company? And so what I wanted to paint a picture, though, is what are the bull case for this company and why should we stay in it if you're concerned about the short-term movements? And so, the cyber cab aside and Optimus, these are massive markets. I don't think anybody in this space disagree with me on that one. And these are, two orders of magnitude, I would say, on both the Cybercab and Optimus, and maybe the Optimus actually hits market first. Who knows? But all that being said, over the next 24 months, I was just down in New York last week visiting with BlackRock and Goldman, and it was interesting to get their sort of economic outlook call on rates and markets. And what can drive Tesla stock over the next 24 months is probably something as simple as what drove it lower in the entire automobile industry over the last 2 years. And we're getting a reverse of interest rates coming down. And they are both, extremely bullish on fixed income. They're actually trying to tell us to load up on bonds because they're going to increase in value. What does that mean? It means that things that we purchase that interest rates affect, like automobiles, will be affected. And Jeff, maybe you can sort of comment on this, but I'm looking at Tesla going, we're sort of at the bottom of Tesla's EBITDA operating margins. And if you start getting a reverse and you have a combination of rates coming down, Tesla no longer having to subsidize their rates, the consumer being more confident to purchase high ticket items. You've got Trump possibly winning the election. Every week it's a different call who wins the election, but my best guess is that it's going to be Trump. He's talking about interest rate deductibility on interest on car payments, which would also inflate the entire auto industry, but especially Tesla as well. And all of a sudden, and Tesla's also bringing down their costs. And when I'm focused on inflation, we're seeing inflation come down dramatically. Here in Canada, we're actually experiencing deflation. So you have costs coming down for Tesla. They're able to scale up their factories possibly from 2 million vehicles to 3 million vehicles next year with some of the cost savings on their existing models. Forget about a Model 2. All of a sudden, you can get back to plus 20% margins and growth rates because people are buying the vehicles, and we haven't even touched on energy. So I know that we're all here looking at these 10x's investments over the next 5 and 10 years, but in the short term, I actually think it could be very, very constructive. And I think that now that we've gotten this event behind us, these events are always create volatility, and the stock usually goes down. I'm happy that we get it behind us and move on. We're actually very constructive and think that the Tesla stock has a high likelihood of doing very well in this environment. Now, we're talking strong economy, where these Goldman and BlackRock are calling for a very strong economy this year and next, driven by investment in AI and also from AI bringing down the cost of many services. So you get this combination, and you'd be surprised what it's going to do to their operating margins. I'd like to hear Jeff's thoughts on that, if he's around.
Sorry. Simon, which topic?
Sorry, high level would be on operating margins for Tesla next year. If we have their costs coming down, interest rates coming down, and deductibility. So all of a sudden their TAM opens up because people are buying cars. They don't have to subsidize the loans. And all of a sudden, and their costs continue to come down because we're seeing deflation in many areas of the economy. We could all of a sudden start seeing, if they sell 3 million vehicles next year and they have plus 20% operating margins, do you think that's pretty realistic?
I think operating and gross margin, there's going to be puts and takes for next year because first off, the rate thing is going to take, I think, 2 years to play out. Like these things aren't going to come down. We're coming from a ZERP environment, and and now we're 300 basis points above nominal inflation. I mean, we just need to get down to that, but I think that's going to take well over a year to get down to those levels so consumers can actually feel it. So I think Tesla is going to be assisting on the interest rate side for a period of time. But what's nice is they tied a lot of it now to purchasing FSD, which gets them cash up front. So I thought that was a brilliant move. And then, so the other big I would say takes out of next year is they're going to have to You're going to have to add capital to the factory if they're building these new vehicles. I know they're going to leverage existing lines, but there's still product specific capex they're going to have to buy, and they're going to have to get that ramped up to rated speed. And then, of course, they're going to have to do the investment for the unbox line for the compact. Is that shifting? I don't know. Is it shifting out of production this year? I don't know. If so, that helps. And of course, they're going to be buying a lot of compute, and all that's going to weigh on the operating margins. Now, what's going to help the operating margins is, 100, very high gross margin FSD expansion happening everywhere. So, I mean, there's going to be, I would say, a series of puts and takes, but in general, you're not going to get I would say, worse off as you were here the last couple of quarters, where you weren't up at your full production capacity. You had to get interest rates down to 1% to 2%. And, you didn't have the FSD solution yet that everybody was, that was going to get you to 20, 30, or 40% adoption. So if that starts happening and they start doing the other country expansions, those are going to be huge puts into the operating leverage side. Now, the operating leverage really kicks in on volume when they get these lower cost vehicles into production and they actually start utilizing, call it 80% of that roughly 3 million units of capacity that Elon's talked about. That's when things really start kicking in. The other thing that people don't talk about, that Tesla has a distinct advantage and nobody else does, and I guarantee you that there were major suppliers invited to that event. And if you're in the procurement world inside of Tesla and you get to sit down with a supplier and say, look, you're going to get a part that's in, you have a part that's in Cybertruck. Do you want the Cybercab business that's going to the many millions, per year? Well, I need some help on today's products. And you've even heard their vice president of supply chain almost use that exact same terminology called NPI leverage on an earnings call. And that's something they're going to be able to do now, I would say, with even greater leverage than before, because over the last year, it's been, doom and gloom, and, numbers are kind of steady to even somewhat down. But now they can leverage that, call that NPI, new product introduction leverage, of the Cybertruck getting the rated speed, the Cybercabs ramping, the interim lower cost vehicles ramping, and they've got a lot of leverage on today's production orders that they can use. So long-winded answer, I think there's a series of puts and takes, but it's certainly getting better.
Interesting. Thank you for that. And then what add-on would be really interesting to see when they start adding FSD in other countries, especially China for that matter, because they're extremely more sort of tech friendly than us in North America. And it would shock me if they had the same kind of take rate that FSD has in North America.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. I think we'll call it a day for today. Appreciate all these speakers. Thank you, Omar. Kilowatts, great that you guys had a fantastic conversation there. We had a number, Warren, Larry, of course, Jeff Lutz, Xander, Simon, and then John from Tesla in Silicon Valley. Sorry we didn't get to call you on you, Lincoln. Next time we'll have to do that. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.